Hello and welcome back to Storysmithing with John Gulick here. My goal today is to write a story. And usually that is stretched over a long period of time, but actually today my goal is to brainstorm and write the complete story tonight, which is going to be very fun to have a quick turnaround. So that's the plan. So we're on a budgeted timeline here to get kind of the outline of this story polished up and to get into that writing process, which I'm going to do, call in the night crew for, and then be able to share kind of the finished product a little bit later on. The focus of the story is that I want to do kind of some sort of a kid's story, and the reason for that, a couple reasons, but one being those are typically a lot shorter, and it'll be a fun little change of pace from sort of the young adult genre that I've been writing in for a while. And I sort of had a fun slash just quirky idea this morning, which was that I should write a story about ghouls because my last name is Gulick. So it would be kind of funny to write a little kid's story about ghouls. And about the extent of my knowledge from that is Harry Potter, where there's a ghoul that lives up in the Weasleys' attic, and that's about all I think we're going to need to know to come up with something for ghouls. So I guess the only other parameter I have in mind already is that I'd like it to be around 1,500 to 2,000 words. I think that's a good length for sort of the goal I have in mind of, this being a story someone would read to a younger kid. So 1,500 words to 2,000 would kind of put it in the the 10-minute range, which I think is pretty good for a bedtime story. So that's that. On to the blank Google Doc. What we're trying to do is brainstorm a story that is going to be entertaining for kids while also having sort of your moral or something that the kid could learn from or appreciate beyond just entertainment value. So that's pretty broad foundation. I don't really have a strong idea of where we're going from there, but I know that we want to write about ghouls, and kind of throughout the day, I thought a handful of times about the title being Ghoulers, as in somebody that goes to sort of take care of these ghouls, try and get them out of the attic. I think that could be one route we go. Another would be actually writing from the perspective of a ghoul. And that could be very interesting because if we're writing from, let's say there's a little family of ghouls that lives up in this attic, and they're sort of playing little tricks on the human family that lives below, that could be an interesting angle to explore as well. I think if we went with the ghoulers route, that would probably provide a more expected template for exploring sort of bravery and I don't know about friendship, but we could definitely lean more into the hero arc if we were a ghouler and we had to go up into a scary attic and scare these ghouls out. So for that reason, and of course this is all just me sort of rambling, for that reason I think going with the ghoul perspective would be interesting because it's less common, and therefore for me as the writer lets me try and be a little bit more flexible. I think to actually create something that I think a kid would enjoy. So let's imagine we're going with the ghoul perspective here. Another nice thing about the sort of scope of the story is, if it's fun and if it's something I enjoy and the nieces and nephews get a kick out of, then it's very easy to come back and do a handful more short ones, and we can return to that ghoulers idea at a different time. But right now, let's go with ghouls. So, do we want to have a single ghoul in the attic or a family? family would give a lot more levers to push and pull. I mean, there's more complexity, but we would have a lot more options in terms of what we can do. Since we are going for a kids focused story rather than young adult or something else, I think it is a good idea to just have one ghoul. The more we can simplify things, the better. And like I said, if this is kind of a fun little project, I could see sort of, the Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. We could have like 7 different ghouls and 7 different little short stories, each with their little adventure. So I don't think it hurts to start with one ghoul. And before we get too far, it's probably a good idea to try to decide what we want a kid to walk away from with this story. One idea I already had would be sort of the value of sharing, and that would be kind of easy to weave into a story where, let's say, this ghoul, his little uh, ha- uh, the thing he does to sort of annoy the humans is he like takes little things, he hides them, and that's why these people are always looking for stuff they can't find where they put it. Over the course of these couple pages, this ghoul could realize he's not being a very nice ghoul and start to return things that he's stolen or misplaced. I think that could be one little arc. But I want to try and think of some other options here. So sharing would be one. Another one, we could go for a little friendship arc. If this ghoul wanted to become friends with one of the humans down there, but he was kind of scared because he's a ghoul and not a human, that could be kind of a nice friendship to try to create. I do like that quite a bit, actually. What else could we do? Sharing, friendship. I guess these sound pretty kiddie, but I guess that's kind of the point. um, we could do kind of a jealousy, envy situation, where let's say one of the kids is the human kids is very good at a particular skill or whatever, and this ghoul is sort of watching and is trying to replicate that skill but can't and is feeling really sad. And maybe he sort of develops the skill over the little story, and then it's kind of a lesson in hard work, and believing in himself that he can do it even if it didn't seem like he could at the beginning. So we could do hard work, sharing, friendship. What else? Right now, I would say friendship is probably the top of my list of those. That sounds the most interesting. We could look at some sort of a quality of life for the ghoul, like maybe the family is moving or is unpacking a bunch of stuff and the attic starts to get more and more filled and his little space up there starts to get more and more cramped. That would be a little bit interesting, but I think for right now, I don't want to spend too much time wandering in possibilities, since I did say I'm hoping to actually write this story tonight, which just gives a couple of hours to actually write the story out. I think let's just go ahead with friendship, and sort of use that as the thematic backdrop of our story. So we're trying to write a story in which this ghoul explores friendship in a somewhat interesting way to a kid. And if there's opportunities for the parent to do funny voices, then that is all the better. So that's going to be our theme. I think it'd be good to let's see, where do we want to start, with character or the plot? Let's go ahead and start with character. I think that'd be helpful for me. That's something I definitely want to grow in, is developing stories around characters rather than the other way around, which is much easier, is what my default kind of is. So I think our two main characters, one is going to be the ghoul, and one is the sort of the human child. And then let's have parents. Do we want anybody else? We could have one more child to kind of, for example, we could have the two kids be friends to start off with, and the ghoul sort of appreciate or envy that, and then that's where the seed gets planted that he wants a friend of his own. So that could be potential, or we could replicate the sibling interaction by giving the kid something like a teddy bear that he really likes, and the ghoul seeing that the kid wants this connection to a teddy bear, but they don't have a sibling, and the ghoul is afraid to approach the kid because he's a ghoul and not a kid, but he wants to make the kid feel better, and sort of overcomes his fear. And I think that probably sounds like our outline. All right, so let's get some of that down. Child has a teddy bear or something that they have a strong connection with. The child is missing a sibling, so they're sort of longing for more of a connection. Let's throw a little asterisk in there that the parents are very busy or preoccupied with something. Preoccupied. So this kid is looking for kind of a friend, and what that's what the ghoul observes. So then the ghoul has to be brave and approach this this child and become friends. And I think that's a nice little arc, because it's teaching the kid to try to be a little bit brave and also think of others, and then coupling the two, which is sort of the kicker here. I think that this ghoul is not just trying to become friends with the child for himself, but because he wants this kid to feel better and be happier. So I think that checks enough warm and fuzzy boxes for us to continue. So that's sort of our little outline. Let's go back to our characters, and I guess I failed at my goal of describing these characters first before getting to the plot, but I guess there's always next time. So our ghoul, let's come up with a great name. And by the way, I sort of had an idea for the first line, which was a character name and then the ghoul. So let's say it was like Gary the ghoul. Nope, that's not the first line I was thinking of. How did it go? I guess I lost it, so we'll have to come up with a new first line. So let's go back to our characters and just identify a handful of attributes that are going to sort of be the focus of their character. So for our child, we identified kind of lonely, looking for a friend. And that's probably one of the driving facades or fronts that this character is going to show in our little story. I'd like to have one or two other sort of identifying markers in there. Again, this is a kid's story, so we don't need like a lot of depth, but it would be nice to have some more. I think identifying a game that the child really likes would be helpful, and that can be a bonding opportunity. If we're going with the theme of the ghoul and the child developing a friendship while the parents are sort of distracted, I think we want that game that the child appreciates to be something they play by themselves. That would sort of fit. And I could see the scene where the ghoul and the child meet to be in the kid's room, as sort of, that would provide a place where the parents wouldn't see, but the ghoul and the child could meet for the first time, and we could sort of play on either the monster under the bed theme or monster in the closet, whatever. So we're looking for a game that the child can play alone and in their room. It could be like blocks, like building little towers. If I was, here's a question. Do we want to go with classic like Lincoln Logs, or give it a little modern spin and give the Magnetiles, the new and improved Magnetiles? These are the real questions. I guess I'm traditional, so let's go back with the Lincoln Logs. That's pretty fun. All right, so Lincoln Logs is the kid's favorite game. And how about one more thing? Let's give him a favorite food. And so I'll just throw out this thought because I've got a handful of thoughts that are trying to run away. So if we just said chocolate chip cookies were his favorite food, I'm kind of seeing some plot elements evolve from just these handful of character points that we've got. So with chocolate chip cookies, imagine our ghoul has been watching this kid for a while, really wants to be his friend, but doesn't know how to approach him. He's got this plan to try and play some Lincoln Logs with the kid, but he's still a ghoul, and this kid is probably terrified of ghouls. If we developed a little bit of an action sequence or rising action, you could say, of our ghoul sneaking into the kitchen to nab some chocolate chip cookies and then bring those to the kid as like a little peace offering or whatever. We've sort of developed a scene with this ghoul going after the cookies. So I think that works. That should work pretty well. Do we want to do something more imaginative than cookies? What would be the options other than just picking a different food? We could do like a Percy Jackson and put a little spin on the food. Like Percy Jackson's mom always makes blue food, like blue cookies, blue chips, blue cake, all that sort of stuff. So we could do a little spin like that. What else could we do? We could give him a really quirky food, so it's not necessarily weird, but it's just rare or like uncommon. And is there a best food to steal? Maybe that's another question for us here. Cookies are a good option. What's the most funny to steal? Maybe that's the best question. Because I think so many kids' books are very humorous at their core, which is great, and we definitely want to bring in those elements as much as possible while still sticking to our theme. So, like, if spaghetti was this kid's favorite, we could probably make a pretty humorous little scene of this ghoul trying to steal, a bunch of spaghetti and spilling it on the floor and leaving this trail of spaghetti sauce. It might be a little bit scary though, so let's pick something different. Oreo fluff would be kind of funny. Leaving some hairs in the Oreo fluff, some ghoul hairs. Alright, how about we go with Jello Jigglers? That's a little Iowa classic here. What's not to like about Jello Jigglers? Alright, so Jello Jigglers are the kid's favorite. So those are kind of our 3 points for the kid. Go ahead and give, let's see, do we want a little boy or a little girl? I guess I'm kind of imagining the ghoul as like a little boy. So I think let's go with a boy as well for the child. And his name can be, let's see, what do we want to go? Levi, Danny, Davis. It's a character from a different story. Probably shouldn't use all my good character names up. How about Jerry? And then we can do Gary as the ghoul. We can have Gary and Jerry. That's probably a little too tricky for kids. I thought that was going to be funny at first for the kids, but I could just see that being confusing. How about Larry? That doesn't really sound like a little boy. Terry? Coming up with names is always the hardest part. Maybe before we do that, let's identify a couple of the ghoul's traits. I think we've already mentioned a handful. So the ghoul is lonely as well, but let's say he wishes he had a family. He had a family of his own ghouls. And this is where we start to trend into the world building a little bit. Like, if I would let my my novel mind run with this, I would be wondering, how we got there. Where are the other ghouls? What is their goal in the attic? Like, are they there just to cause mischief, or are they, it'd be if we were doing like an Artemis Fowl and had sort of an underground society of magical creatures, we could make ghouls sort of the spies. Like these ghouls are stationed in certain homes to keep an eye on things, but we're definitely not going there. So let's leave the world building alone. So we just have this ghoul here. Glip, is that a good name for a ghoul? Yeah, that should work pretty well. That sounds like a ghoul's name. Glip. All right. So Glip is lonely, but he wishes he had a family of his own ghouls. Let's say, I'm trying not to overlap the child and Glip too much. Like, I'm very tempted to just say Glip wants to play like Lincoln Logs, or just wants to play with somebody else, but we're almost, I don't know, we're probably getting too similar between these, and we need a little bit of like separation or distinction. I think we need something cool for Glip to have up in the attic that he likes, that maybe the boy doesn't know about. And then sort of here we go, the resolution of our story is that Glip and our boy have become friends, and Glip shows him whatever the cool thing is in the attic. The boy's kind of scared, but he trusts Glip, and they go up and see whatever it is. And that's kind of the resolution, because this boy has come to trust Glip, and that's like the proof of their friendship. So what is it in the attic that Glip, should I change it to Glib? Glib. Not quite sure what's funnier. We'll leave it as Glip for now. All right, so what would be the funniest thing or the most interesting little thing he could have up in his attic? How about a house of cards? He loves stacking cards, and he gets a little sad whenever the family below moves a lot and his cards fall down. That's pretty harmless. How about that? And let's say that can be sort of his inspiration for causing a little bit of mischief, is that if he gets sad when his cards fall down, that's what causes him to go down there and hide something or spill a little spaghetti sauce on the ground or whatever. Okay. Can we get one more thing for Glip? How does he feel about doing mischief? Is he a little bit, does he enjoy it, or does he feel his conscience kicking in a little bit? I think let's have his conscience kick in a little bit. I mean, we are writing a kid's story, and if I go a little heavy-handed on the morality, I don't think I'm probably going to get sued for it. So let's say Glip starts to feel bad. He starts feeling bad as he's doing his mischief, and we could even say this is something he's been told to do, but he doesn't think it's right. Boy, it is hard to write and speak, as always, especially with this keyboard. So, okay, so we've kind of got 3 little character points for Glip. He's lonely, but he wishes he had a family of his own ghouls. He loves doing his cards, and he feels a little bit bad when he's doing mischief. So I think those are probably enough. Again, we're only looking at 1,500, 2,000 words. We've got our 3 points for the boy. I think the parents are really just adjacent to the story. They're just going to be there, sort of doing their own thing, acting as rationales for why the boy is looking for a friend and why Glip can't just sort of approach the boy at any time and say hello. So I guess the last thing then probably is coming up with a name for the boy. We can take another shot at that, I guess. And then we have our plot outline, which is a massive 38 words, which is about 1,000th of the word count for my book outline, my next book outline, which is sitting behind me on the shelf. So much nicer to have a 1-paragraph outline rather than like a 250-page outline. So the boy. Davy could be a name. Clay, Glip. Let's see, what would go well with Glip? Glip and Davy, Glip and Sam. Glip and Chip. That would be like a flavor of a dip. Well, let's go with Davy. I think that's pretty friendly. All right, so Glip and Davy, they're going to be best buds at the end of this story. So I think that's going to conclude our outline here. It's going to earn record for shortest episode ever, not counting the readings of Hazeltop, I guess. But I'm going to pause there, and it's about 5 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and get started on the story and hopefully crank it out here within a handful of hours and kind of see what happens. I'm going to try really hard not to let the story grow, which is definitely what has happened with a handful of other ones. So my goal is to finish that, and then I'll go ahead and read the kind of finished story at the, I guess in a new episode. That would probably make more sense when this becomes a best-selling story and people need to access it without 30 minutes of me rambling about how it got there. So I will do that, and I hope you appreciated this 30-minute flash brainstorm, and hope you have a great day. Thanks.